Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reviews where today I'll be checking out the latest album, the latest release from an act named Glenn Murawski titled Sojourn. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves the track on Bandcamp. If I make it a bit bigger, can I make it bigger? We can indeed make it bigger. We have made it bigger. Here is the art on the screen for you to look at. And we've got 6 tracks we're going to be checking out today, through Slings and Arrows to Broken Sweet Dreams. These are Cityscapes and Spirit Wanderer are like bonus tracks in addition to the concept, I think, of this album. So we're going to be listening through tracks 1 to 6 from start to finish. And we're going to hear what we think. Let's go. Slings and Arrows. Instantly sounds kind of menacing, doesn't it? Interesting shift with the main melody and interesting textures. It's kind of ferocious, isn't it, with the percussion? And having the strings come in at a higher range here. It's actually kind of pretty. All the synths, should I say. You get the impression with a sense of discord that things are not going to go particularly well. In terms of being an instrumental intro, I think the Slings and Arrows does a fantastic job of setting the scene. We start quiet, slowly bring things up, introduce a really perilous percussion here with a massive amount of power now low and that oomph there, with the strings and synths cascading above with intermittent, kind of angsty interludes. I like the wide range of different tones and timbres that we've got within this album so far with Slings and Arrows, and it'll be good to see what we have next with Perilous. Track number 2. Raise the sound design with the fizzy noises. And it only kind of filters out to one side of the stereo field. I mean, the choir is angelic and woodwinds suit it well. A little bit of a flutter there, but it's like, how do I describe it? It's like, I understand that we know the fundamentals of music theory and composition. You know, I've listened to Glenn's work before, and I don't think I've ever been disappointed by it. It's great to explore these concepts. What I like about it is that we're not afraid to break the rules and introduce some sort of chromatics or accidentals into the mix and kind of make people feel uncomfortable with our tunes in a way that's not too forced. Interesting sub-bass resonance oscillating there as well. almost sort of cyberpunk-esque. I do love the use of panning of the different instruments and the exploration of the stereo field. I think is very well done. I have a lot of groove to the bass though. And with the piano lead there, tinkering in the right hand. With guitars as well. I mean, this showcases the expertise that Glenn has, collected over the last 19 years. I think that Glenn's been doing it since 2004. I mean that sincerely, by the way. This is very good. It's not random by any means. There's clear exploration of different themes and eloquent attempts to link them together and sync them, make them smooth, while still being a little bit uncomfortable at times. I think it's great use of cello in the low end as well, a bit of a buzz there. Makes me wonder how many different instruments are within this song alone. Are we modulating that? A little bit of turntables, and can you hear that? Can you just hear how much is going on within this? And how there's this great use of different sort of main and sub layers in there interwoven into this really complex sort of array of different ingredients. And great use of the bell curve there, coming down a little bit at the end there dynamically. I mean, it's all very deliberate, isn't it? And switching to that triad at the end, the major tonality, nice. Is this meant to represent like kind of static or thoughts in the brain, kind of messing with your train of thought and being able to concentrate? Not to give too much away, my understanding of this album, the inspiration about it, is actually, it's about Glenn's personal life and some of the darker places that they've been through on that journey. And I think that if we look at Perilous and we listen to it and we think, does this sound Perilous? I think it does. You can kind of imagine being in the middle of a blizzard, trying to climb a mountain, ironically to the point where there is less snow and there is less chaos. It's really invigorating in how much it doesn't try to coddle the listener. I don't think we're interested in a situation where, oh yeah, no, you can have some nice sort of generic chord progressions and pretty sounds. And there might be a bit of dark stuff, but it's okay. We'll minimize it. It's not in the same way. It's not the extreme opposite of that either. But I think it is accurately representing uniquely Glenn's own experience, combined with just a understanding not only music theory and composition as mentioned before, but also a fundamental understanding of electronic music production. Because electronic music production is incredibly difficult to do, both uniquely and well. You've really got to be able to stitch everything together cleanly because there's just no room for error. We managed to nail that well here. I don't know if that came across well, but I tried to explain it as best I could. I might talk about that more in the conclusion if I haven't already overdid it here, or I might correct myself. But anyways, we've got Home after this, track number 3. Nice, turn downwards. I understand some of the noises and other tones are going upwards at the same time, juxtapositions. Is this to infer that home is a confusing place? We've got counter rhythms. Da 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 da, and that thing going up and down on the other side. And it's sort of disconcerting. You don't know which to pay attention to. Don't think it's a bad thing though. So those are guitars, right? With a bit of cutting and chopping in there. Like, have we modulated or recorded takes of like guitars or stuff like that and switched them into a synth? Or is that specifically a synth itself? Or like, have we got like an actual guitar which has been cut with like pedals and stuff like that? Yeah, that's kind of visceral, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of feral sounding how some of them are rubbing up against each other in like flat seconds. I don't think home is supposed to be a particularly happy place, given how this is sounding. Again, similar to the situation we are with Slings and Arrows, I think Home, it just starts with a little bit of animosity, and then it just more and more comes. There's sweetness and innocence in some of the high range synths and some of those other really pretty tones, but there's also this sort of lapse of like aggression in there that kind of renews itself, and just those verses kind of those tones, they're sharp. And I think the fact that the music cuts at you is kind of fascinating, because really it just tells you without needing to have a vocalist what it is all about. You can hear the contrast between the two sides of it. You can imagine what Glenn is going through. And that's very good songwriting and very good composition. It establishes that the theme does what a lot of music struggles to do, even at a professional level, even with singers, where it kind of has a sense of cohesion to it. So well done to Glenn on that front. I think that the sound design was fascinating, and it's been strength to strength. At 4 minutes, whether it's 6.5 or whether it's 1.5, there are basically virtually no weak spots. And at the halfway point of this review, I am enamored and fascinated to hear what happens next. But we'll hear Home Out, and then we'll listen through Ponderance, track number 4. Interesting, a little bit softer with this one. Maybe some interesting sort of filtering or something like that as well to remove lower echoes, lower resonances. I'll go back a little bit so we can enjoy that Portamento synth coming in, but just, I think a lot about what makes this track work, or these tracks in general work, is that even if we have a specific sort of musical idea or melody or sort of like quote unquote hook line or theme we're going with for the entirety of the track, even if there's slight adjustments to the chord or progressions or whatever, we are never allowed texture to go unaccompanied for too long. There is gradual development or manipulation or adjustment there, with layers being taken away or introduced. I wouldn't have expected the ferocity of the percussion there, man, the drums. Typically when you have drums that quick in a track, they can be kind of overpowering, but at the same time, we've managed to make them subtle enough in the mix where it just seems like it's just a more busy part of the overall sort of like concept. And I think we're just going to continue to have those adventures within this album. It's nice to not know what to expect. I think we're going parallel major, so to be fair. Alright, it's a really simple idea at its base, but it's about how these extra kind of additions interact. And like, we don't typically, again, I know I'm just repeating myself at this point. I was about to say we don't allow things to kind of like tie in neatly, but Hell of a hit though, again reminiscent of dynamic range. Ponderance. Okay. See, so I suppose if there's anything, we can sort of somewhat predict that we're going to get a change or an adjustment at like the 16th bar mark, or fairly sort of solid with knowing, oh, that even amount of squares is where we need to go. I feel like this could be used for film scores if it isn't already. And again, like that's a natural kind of cooling off point. Going with the filter and getting rid of the lower energies to kind of make it seem a little more sort of fluffy and floaty. With the stereo panning delay going to the sides. I get the impression from this track Ponderance that we're not only got a lot on our mind. It's kind of like a big sort of hornet's nest, but at the same time we're trying to sort of simultaneously attempt it in a meditative way. Like we're trying to sort of like look at what we went through and the things we had to overcome, or the things we had to sort of deal with. We became a bigger person and understood the world better because of it. But there was just tension, and there was almost sort of like a bit of chaos in there in the meantime. It seems to me that the Ponderances, like, they never got too dark with these. There was no sort of like super duper tense sort of intervals or anything like that. So it makes me think that even if there was a lot of introspection that went on, it was well worth it. Going into the final third, the final act of this album. Because we actually have Sojourn 721. Some really kind of we kind of resolve, but it's like a very kind of jazzy, almost experimental resolution. Kind of reminds me of some sort of classical stuff in the Asiatic region back in the day. Good. I mean, the sub bass resonance is phenomenal. The kick really kicks you in the teeth. What is the dominant rhythmic phrasing though? Still 4/4, I suppose? Sassy. Kind of nice to have the expectations messed with. What I will say is that it kind of lulls you into a trance. This kind of music, it's kind of, you got to be careful how you review it, because if you talk too much, you know you're going to miss stuff. But if you talk too little, you can just sit there just kind of vibing with it, and then it ends, and then 7 minutes has passed. You know, disregarding fair use and all that. So, you know, if you're watching this video and I'm not talking for 7 minutes, you may as well just go and listen to the music on the Bandcamp, right? Ironically, if I annoy people enough by pausing and they go listen to the music in their own time, that's probably better for the artist. But that isn't the aim, of course, to annoy people. But you know, really pushing the limiter in the master chain though. It's nice to have the keys come bong, 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 bong. Loops back nicely. This is unusual. It's almost like we're playing with the expectations and like screwing with the limiting and pushing it and pumping it for the effect as a way of switching up transitioning. Almost sounds sort of playful with the way things are phrased at the moment, which is kind of a What I will say though is that it's a risky move doing a 7-minute 21 track. Risky move even doing a 5 or 6-minute track, let alone a 7. And we've got like an almost 10 one after this. Not that I am uninterested or, like you really need to be able to create grounded concepts and know how to link them well and continue to keep them interesting in order to justify the run, especially without a story pushing people forward. Because the risk can be that if you establish the theme too much in the beginning, people already know what's around. So no matter how much you manipulate it, it will not be enough to kind of keep it refreshing. Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that one. I'm not sure how I feel about Sojourn. I was sticking with it up until like the first 5 minutes or so. I think around that 6th minute, I was like, I didn't intend at the time to hint at the fact that I might not necessarily be as sort of like secure in my positive evaluation of the length of it. The thing that I consider when I listen to tracks is I go, does this song need to be 7 minutes? It can be as long as a musician wants, and I understand that, especially considering this is quite a personal thing for Glenn Murawski. I am not going to say that it shouldn't have been 7 minutes 21. What I would ask is, if we are going to make it that length, does every minute and every second contribute to a way of reaffirming the original intent of the track? And does it give the listener something new to learn or to cling on to? Because I feel like we had quite a lot of a similar idea overall. There were some instruments that were introduced and they were continued throughout, and those melodies or sort of like ideas were repeated. And it's more that I think I became familiar with some of the percussive patterns and note choices. And it might have been good to have different solo sections or something like that. If we wanted to have a 7-minute long aesthetic, we nailed it. And I think that that's well done. And that isn't me saying that I think the track is poorly made or poorly composed. I'm just not sure if we needed all of it. And if we couldn't have maybe made like a shorter version of this that had enough of the concept and then have had the extended version as like a bonus track. Just simply for people who enjoy the theme specifically to have more time with it if they choose to. But then again, these tracks are through composed. They're not using the traditional sort of like contemporary verse chorus thing, in part because they are instrumentals. But even then, yeah, we'll see what we do though with Broken Sweet Dreams. I think the combinations of synths, noise textures, and drums in that one, as well as some of the bass resonances and post-production choices were great. But it'll be interesting to see how we spin Broken Sweet Dreams. See, that's a nice turn there to the major. Is this a cloud drum? Because they're gorgeous, aren't they, cloud drums? Would love one, eh? Great delay tails and well. I love how they simmer in the sides. It almost commits to being a different movement or direction entirely rhythmically with the way those 16th notes are placed, but we know to stop at the halfway point. Okay, we're gonna have something new in a moment. You caught me. You got me. I think that's great. That means that we aren't always kind of following the rule of 8 or 16th bars. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, by the way. I'm not being facetious. It's more that, like, I like that we have the confidence to stick with something and kind of like see where it goes. Smart coming in here with extra layer. Again, I hesitate to consider how many different individual instrumental layers we had throughout this, how many different choices we made there across the entire album. Great choice. I'm glad that we picked up the ante with the hand percussion there to bring in something new. I was kind of thinking there for a moment, is it possible that at some point we come down in the middle? Because often with these tracks, we have a quieter start, quieter end. The middle is like that, right? I'm not sure if we're at a track here. We might have, to be fair, actually. We might have had that with the previous track. Ferocious with the bass though. Are we combining a cymbal with hand drums? I've just realized this isn't a traditional sort of like drum beat, is it? Electric bass with hand drums and a cymbal on the side, with sparkly synth leads on the top there. And woodwinds? It is quite unique. Harmonized woodwinds. Like, we know not to resolve between parts. Kind of sounds like the hand drums are tapping in your brain. If you're not wearing headphones when you watch this, would recommend. It's very interesting with sound design in those hand drums. Great finesse to the phrasing of them though. Great choice. I'm really satisfied with that. Just coming off with the shakers instead. Tambourine. Very foil to the hand drums. Crescendo to the end. Nice work bringing it down to the end. Broken Sweet Dreams was a lot. It was a lot. A lot of these tracks are a lot. I get the impression that this album is going to be a little bit polarizing. For some people who are not as used to instrumental stuff and who don't necessarily have an explicit understanding of what this album is about, I think that some of the choices compositionally with the way the instruments intermingle and kind of go off each other might be a little bit affronting. I don't think that's a bad thing in music, don't get me wrong. Like, I like my I like listening to horrific sounding stuff. I like my metal a really kind of hard kind of metal and stuff like that. I like stuff where people are screaming and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. I'm a dubstep. I like stuff with harsh textures and stuff like that. And this isn't anything near that. But what I mean is that with the way the note choices and chords are reflected, you're not getting nice majors and minor triads and stuff, and things aren't trying to be pretty together. You get clashy flat seconds and like tritones and all that kind of stuff, and it's just wild, man. And it's that experience that, you know, Glenn Murawski has been happening with their life, and they're putting it into music. With that said, I mean, if we take it from the understanding all the album is about, Broken Sweet Dreams seems like the summation of the entire process that they've had across these 6 tracks, you know. Slings and Arrows had a bit of animosity to it. Perilous, I mean, we'll talk about it more in the conclusion, but Broken Sweet Dreams is just that kind... You don't finish nicely with this one. It's feisty and precocious until the end, and there's just a lot to talk about. Let's just do the conclusion. And welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track, or rather this album, from an act named Glenn Murawski titled Sojourn. We listened to 6 tracks today: Slings and Arrows, Perilous, Home, Ponderance, Sojourn, and Broken Sweet Dreams. And I spoke about what each of the tracks are about in the individual sort of mini conclusion sections at the end of each track. The album in general, I think it maintains the concept well of describing the stay that Glenn had, or the points in their life where they were struggling with stuff, the darkness there. It was communicated, because there weren't lyrics in this track, but I think it's partially the album is successful because you do not need lyrics to be able to understand how the song titles relate to the music. I don't think there was a single track here where you couldn't sort of like put 2 and 2 together and get a connection. I'm very, very happy with the fact that that is the way it is. If I had any criticisms, it would by no means be that I could not understand the way that things are interconnected. I do think that, ironically, despite this not, as I understand it, not being deliberately a concept album from Glenn Murawski, I think the overall concept of the album does match very well together. I'm very satisfied with the way that it was done. I think that we've got ourselves just a really skilled composer who was able to articulate meanings well within this, put tracks together in a way that's very satisfying, even if you don't necessarily like how things are rubbing up against each other harmonically or texturally. It's not an album that takes you by the hand and goes, everything's going to be okay. But that said, if I was to go beyond what I thought the album was about, where it did basically discuss some of the darker and more difficult parts of Glenn's existence in a way which I thought was more than satisfactory, there is so much, man. There is so much going on in each of these tracks, which range from 1:31 all the way up to near 10 minutes. With Sojourn, I think for me, it was too much of a semi-similar concept. Broken Sweet Dreams was getting that way a little bit too, but we managed to just adjust that point where we had like a lot of the variety with the hand drums, but the hand drums just kept going. We switched away the tambourine. It was an absolute masterstroke. There was just this incredible amount of tension that was building and building and building and building and building. And then eventually we got to a point where we I don't want to say we climaxed, because that sounds incredibly, it's not very appropriate, but we got to a point where I don't even know if it necessarily paid off, because it never fully sort of resolved, but then it depends on what you think a resolution needs to be. Did it reach the finale, the point where Glenn wanted to sort of like communicate, which is that things never really truly got better? Maybe that is where we ended up with Broken Sweet Dreams. None of these tracks are particularly positive. If we talk about a few of my favorite instruments from this album, bearing in mind is about there's an entire orchestra's worth of different synths, strings, the percussive parts, bass, the guitar parts, all sorts. I think one of the key stars of this entire situation were the drums. We had hand drums, drum kits, claps, tambourines. We managed to find the correct tone, like rhythmically for the different grooves. We never stuck to a straight 4/4 unless we desperately needed to. We had an incredibly intimate understanding of quarters and eighths, triplets, 16ths, 32nd trills, all sorts of crazy stuff going on here we managed to not only play with the existing grooves of other instruments instantiated, we also counteracted against them. We almost had polyrhythms or polymeters going on with different elements within the mixture as well. That never became too much for the drums, the percussion, everything like the handle. Percussion for me was the star of the show, and it's one of the reasons why I think I enjoyed this album. There were synths as well. Lots of different synth pads, synths like noisy synth textures, synth leads, all sorts of synths, and they had different functions and performed different rituals, and some of them were the main sort of theme, others were more of sort of like a ground bit, like was it Slings and Arrows or Perilous, where like that would, you know, it was like more of a sort of like, it was meant a vibe starter. It was visceral, and I've said that a few times in this. But to be able to create something like that and get it to work like that, like a worm in your skull, is incredibly, like, that's cool. It's really cool. I cannot fault the sound design. It's more of a post-production thing, but to be fair, I think part of what made the synth so irreplaceable is the fact that there was so much love put into each and every individual, like, part of it, and we never slept on a tone. Even if I didn't necessarily enjoy some of the way the different, you know, things kind of, because I've said a lot of words and I don't want to repeat a lot of words, there were some uncomfortable situations with the harmonies and altercations between different notes that didn't sort of like pat each other on the back particularly nicely. But the choice of the actual sounds was phenomenal. And there were even some parts where like I wasn't even sure if it was like a guitar, like it was all choppy and stuff like that. It was wild, man. But it was cool. And I think that music doesn't need to be pretty to be good. And I appreciate the work that Glenn put in here to kind of communicate that. I think honestly, if people are wanting to get into instrumental music, this is a good kind of stepping stone to get into maybe some of the harder stuff that is legitimately difficult to listen to. Because this wasn't difficult to listen to, don't get me wrong. There's some really wild stuff out there that is just, it's honestly, half of it is probably just poorly written. But Glenn's written this well. And to be kudos to Glenn for making 7 and 10 minute tracks bearable, because to a lot of people, especially in this day and age with the way the music industry is, listening to a 10-minute track is a very, very long time. It's a huge commitment, especially with a lot of tracks being 1 to 2 minutes nowadays. So well done. Whenever they were bass, they fit the root notes well. The guitars were a nice mid-range sort of aesthetic palette cleanser. The strings that we had harmonized nicely, were a nice sort of smooth layer in that mid-range as well. There are keys as well, pianos, mostly the right hand there, that were nice sort of alternative voicings to some of the synth leads. Had a bit more kind of clarity and pep in it. And like so many others, there were like woodwinds as well, like flutes or like that kind of stuff, and they were almost kind of sounded mystical, like a fantasy kind of realm kind of thing. And just all in all, like just the choices for the instruments involved were great. It left no need really for a singer. I still would have preferred to have dominant lead instruments at some points, especially in the longer tracks, as I never really got the feeling. Like in the description for this music, it says rock, classical, and electronica to create music that is pensive and contemplative in nature. Even then, I'm greedy, and I still would have preferred to have occasional leads, just kind of have little solo-y bits, just to be like, oh, that is a voice telling me something. I wonder what that is. Then go back to the ether. Maybe even have one of those per track. But then we did have leads. We just had really intimate sub-leads. And a lot of tracks had so many things going on, they weren't necessarily sure what the dominant lead was. But that was because of maybe the confusion that Glenn was going through. Thematically, I spoke about the tracks individually simply because of a lack of there's the story that's being sung. But I think that each of the themes fit well. It was Perilous. I think that any difficulty within the listening experience relative, especially people who are less familiar, would be a deliberate thing in part. They just have to kind of cope with. Thematically, I think this did a great job musically of communicating the stuff that Glenn was going through in a way that is organic and authentic, and I'm thankful and really proud of Glenn for being able to tell us about it, because it can be difficult to express that, right? I mean, like, I want to talk about, there were majors and minors and like extensions and modes, modular shifts and stuff like that, and lots of chromatics. But this stuff I've already talked about during the review, and I know this is already an hour as is. The studio recording, mixing, mastering, the post production was solid. Things were almost claustrophobic in the mix at times. I think that's just because things were pushed in a way that made it that way. We did have dynamic range, things did come down in perceived loudness occasionally. Lots of exploration of the stereo field. Things were automated, so that sometimes they're going to center to the right, or like wheel, wheel, wheel. You know, things were lovingly niched in the frequency spectrum. There were no resonant frequencies, which surprises me because there should have been, considering how difficult it would have been to mix this. Just goes to show the work that Glenn's put in and the expertise on display. Finally, it was nice and loud without pumping, so the bus compression limiting is handled. Effectively, this is my review of this album from an act named Glenn Murawski titled Sojourn, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show him some love via the various social medias and the Bandcamp page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they either help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I'll catch you in the next review. Spiderhands out.